Dax, welcome to the ProFit podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Say hello to the audience.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Excited to figure out where we're gonna end up taking this conversation today.
Yeah, we've scheduled plenty of time, so we're gonna just see what we can get out of today. And I know, first of all, thank you for coming on and spending some time with us, because for me personally, and I know Matt will speak for himself on this, but we did your mind mapping course a few years ago. One of the best courses I've ever done, like without question. And I believe you were mentor to our mentors, Graham and Steve, way back in the day. I think you were one of their first mentors. So thanks for that as well, because without those two guys, we wouldn't be where we are today. And by the sound of it, without you, they wouldn't be where they are today.
Yeah, I've been around a bit. I've been in the industry for about 24 years, and a lot of the people that are kind of really well known in both personal training and coaching have at least some links to me, and it'd be very disingenuous for me to say that they are who they are because of me. It's not the case. I seem to be very fortunate in attracting really motivated, inspiring, and self-driven people into my circle. And then obviously kind of whatever tuppence I can add to where they were already going. Kind of, it's always nice to see them shining and carrying on and making a difference elsewhere. But yeah, I've been very fortunate over the years that's been a common core theme. Personal trainers, therapists, and coaches who've gone on to influence. And that, to be honest, that was always part of my strategy. I always wanted to be an influencer to influencers. Before the word influencer came out and all of that, I kind of, back in the day, I said, what is it that you want to be? Do you want to be the big guy on the stage all by himself with the spotlights, the kind of Tony Robbins-esque kind of guy? Or do you want to be the guy who puts loads and loads of people on stages and facilitates that and helps that? And that's really the direction that I took. So yes, it's really nice for you to mention that.
Well, it's definitely worked, especially, well, from a personal point of view, I can tell you that's definitely worked. And one of the other reasons we wanted to get you on was, I'm not 100% sure where you've kind of been in the fitness industry for the last couple of years. I mean, you've always been there as a huge influencer of influencers throughout my career, but I'm 20 odd years into it as well. And I think I wanted some of the trainers that we coach and that the listeners of this show, because a lot of them are maybe a year or two into their career and might not know who you are, bizarrely, which I find bizarre. So I wanted to kind of get you back.
To be honest, I find it more bizarre if they did.
Right. Well, you were such a big influence in the industry and on me and everybody I'd known that I find it odd that some of the newer trainers don't know who you are. So I wanted to make sure that we got you on and you talked about all the things that you've taught us over the years. So yeah, that was a chance to do that. So we've done a bit of a spiel in the intro to the episode, but tell everybody a brief kind of intro to yourself, what you're about, what your background is.
All right. So Dax Moy is the first part, right? Kind of a guy with a really short and very strange name. It's not a nickname, it really is my name. Yeah, and just a fun fact, if you Google Dax Moy, there's literally only one name combination of that in the entire world. So kind of, I own it. Yeah. No offense to any John Smiths or kind of any of that kind of stuff, but like there's only one Dax Moy. So yeah, I mean, a lifetime ago now, I was just telling you before we came on, I'm 51 now, and I'm a granddad and everything. So kind of I've got a lot of life behind me. And a long time ago, in another life, I was a soldier. So I've been commando forces, airborne forces, not special forces, but what's now known as special operations forces. So kind of, done a bit of that. Never been to war, but kind of and spent most of my time as a reservist, which I absolutely loved. But always kind of, when I was a kid, I always had this feeling that I was going to be a full-time soldier literally till the day I die, hopefully, retirement. But kind of, I thought that was going to be me. And then when I started my family, and we were also talking about that, just before we came on, I started my family young. I realized that it wasn't really the life that I wanted. I loved the bit of being in green and jumping out of planes and going over assault courses and shooting rifles and hiding in bushes and all of that kind of boy's own survival-y stuff. But I didn't really want to see myself as the kind of dad who was always going to be absent and never be around his kids and never be around his wife. And I'd seen a lot of people in the forces not do very well with their relationships, either with their partners or their kids. And so I decided not to go down that route, and instead became for a while I was almost like a full-time reservist. So I left the regular armed forces, became a reserve soldier. Back in the day, we used to call it the TA, but it's the reserves now. And so I became a reservist. But as a reservist, I was almost like a full-timer in that I would go on a course that was 2 weeks to a month, come back off that course, be back home for 2 or 3 weeks, sign on another course and go off on that. And it was one of the wonderful things that you could do being a reservist that you couldn't do as a regular. So in the regular armed forces, if you want to train, let's say, as a combat engineer, you train as a combat engineer, and pretty much, with few exceptions, you're going to be a combat engineer until you leave the forces. It's what they do. In the reserves, you can go and be a PTI, you could be a medic, you could be an explosives expert, you can go on a parachute course, you can literally, and that's kind of what I did. I just went shopping for courses. Had a wonderful time. Got a lot of Boy Scout badges. But there was also the realization that I needed a civilian job to kind of counterbalance that. Otherwise, I was, kind of still doing what I'd originally said I didn't want to do, which was spend all my time away from my family, right? So I did quite a few different things. I've been a bodyguard for a very short period of time. Boring, didn't like it. Kind of didn't really like the kind of people that had bodyguards, you could say. They didn't necessarily treat them very well, okay? And didn't really use them for protection. It was more like a kind of an appendage, or a kind of an accessory. Accessory makes more sense than appendage. That just sounds weird. Dax Moy is an appendage. No, kind of. I set up a kind of a handyman company. I worked as a road sweeper. I worked in the sewers for a while. Literally shoveling shit at one point, and it was a really good job, actually. I really liked it. I was taught how to be a miner, so actually how to dig the mine shafts into the sewer. And it was actually quite a fun job. I liked it, and the guys I worked with were really great. But yeah, the long and the short of it is I did lots of things, it was just like dipping my toe all the time. And I was like, well, what do you really want to be when you grow up? And I was 28 at the time, and I'd already been a military physical training instructor, and I'd already been a boxer, and I'd already gone through all these really tough regiments of commando and airborne and all this kind of stuff. And so I was asking myself, what's the theme of your life? Other than wearing green a lot, what's the theme of your life? Like, what do you really, really enjoy doing? And it was fitness. It was all forms and shapes of fitness. And I already had my PTI qualification, but civilian gyms didn't really want me with that. I guess they imagined me coming in and beasting their clientele. So they said I had to go away and get a qualification. So the qualification I went and got was a level 2 YMCA gym instructors award. Literally, I was just looking for something to tick the box to say, oh, you've got a civvy qualification. So I went away and did that. Came back and got a job in a gym. Literally £5 an hour for 2 hours a week. They gave me the crappy shift on Saturday morning where all the other trainers and gym instructors were too hungover from the night before, and they went, right, you've got the 7 and 8 a.m. inductions at the gym, and it's 2 hours a week. So there's your tenner a week. And literally, I was on a tenner a week. I wanted to be a trainer there. They wouldn't let me be a trainer because I didn't have a level 3 diploma. So I started studying for that, and I eventually got that. But during that time, during the time I was studying for the level 3, I started spending a lot of time in the gym. So I was being paid for 2 hours, but I was probably in the gym for about 40 hours a week. I was there doing my own training, doing my 2 hours, but then I just walked the gym floor and I talked to all the members, and I just really, really got to know everybody and what they were really there for, and I'd assist them with some programming and all of this. I wasn't a trainer yet. I wasn't allowed to do training. So it was just me being kind of like a handyman at the gym kind of thing, in a way, just walking around. But the very day that I got my bit of paper that said I was allowed to be a PT, I walked into that gym, started touting for business, if you want to put it that way, and I signed up almost half the gym like overnight. So there were 4 other trainers working out in the gym at the time, and within a month I had more clients than all 4 of those trainers put together. So my time just basically being useful to people, and this is way back when I didn't know anything about marketing, I didn't know anything about sales. In truth, if I'm really, really honest now, I probably wasn't even a very good trainer at the time, because a lot of my modality, the very thing that civilians were scared of in hiring me, like that I was going to be this guy who'd run people ragged and beast, that was kind of how I knew fitness at the time.
Yeah.
And so it'd be, you know, you'd pound them to death. It's still, there was actually still a bit more sense behind it. Like, I didn't treat them like soldiers, but at the same time, the measure of a workout was how hard it was, how breathless they were at the end of it. And the next time I saw them say, oh my God, my arms were killing me for days after that. And I'd be like, yes, right. So I wasn't a brilliant, I was, you know, I wasn't the, I guess you could say, the technician that I later became. I became very technical later on. I wasn't that, and yet I became the busiest trainer in the gym. And from there, I became a consultant for the very first GP referral program in the country, was run in my borough. So I became a consultant on that, and I got rejected for that 3 times before they took me on. And because I didn't have a degree, and yet the thing is, there was no such thing as a degree in that subject. So I would go to the British Library after work, cycle down there, go and study things on injury rehab, and study things on cardiac rehab and various medications and their effect on physiological function. And I went back for a second interview, and they went, you can see you've improved a lot, but you know, you still don't have a degree, mate. There's nothing we can really do for you. So I went away and spent another 6 weeks at the British Library, and I came back, and effectively I interviewed my interviewers. And I proved to them that basically, even with their degrees and master's degrees, they didn't know the stuff that I knew. And so they were kind of semi-forced to give me a crack. And so I became a GP referral consultant. Within 6 weeks, I was the senior consultant of my own center. So I had a team working under me. And within 6 months, I was pretty much the senior consultant of the program. So I was running the GP referral. Then I went on to neural rehab. And I was getting people out of wheelchairs and all of that kind of stuff. People that were told they'd never walk again, people that had strokes or traumatic brain injuries, they were told they wouldn't be able to lift their arms again, walk again, and I was able to help them do everything they were told they wouldn't be able to do. And I ended up I ended up presenting a few times down at the neurological hospital in Queen Square to real neurologists, and I'm just this kind of little PT guy, and the neurologists are kind of going, how are you making this? Like, we understand the theory of the neurology, but we've never been able to get people to do the stuff that you're doing. And we're trying to kind of close the gap between textbook neurology and what they were actually seeing with their own eyes when I was doing certain things to their patients and clients. Yeah, I mean, so, you know, I guess that's the PT background. I was going to say in a nutshell, I think that was quite long-winded, but kind of in a nutshell, I became a PT who was in demand from other trainers, I guess you could say, even before I was in demand from the higher level, and I say higher level tongue in cheek, but the higher level public. So trainers wanted to know, very similar to those doctors, they wanted to know, well, how the hell are you getting that kind of result for your client? And what is it that you're doing? So I started out running some sort of like free workshops, and those free workshops, and there's a pattern here, right? Because I went from doing stuff for free in the gym to having a busy client base. I didn't know anything about marketing. So people just asked me, hey, would you teach us some of that shit? And I was like, yeah, right. Come down to this place, and we'll hire this little space. And started out with just 4 trainers in there, kind of, and I'd say, oh, I'll do this and I'll do that. And they'd pick my brains and say, yeah, but what's the reason that works? And pretty soon I found myself being a teacher. And then I found myself with 10 people coming along, and they're paying me a couple of £100 for the weekend to learn it. And then 20 or 30 people coming along, and they're paying me £500, £600, £700, £800 each to learn this stuff, which, you know, kind of it developed into the Kinetic Change Specialist Program, which was kind of the first of its kind in the country. Like, no one was doing anything like that at the time. I know there were a few firms, a few companies doing that now, but nobody was doing it at the time. And the closest you could find to anybody in the world even doing it was going to be like Gary Gray and Paul Check at the time. They would have been the guys. So I took their stuff, you know, kind of, not ashamed to say, I kind of lock, stock and barrel, begged, borrowed and stole all of it, recombined it, looked at it and looked at it in a way that I thought kind of simplified it, but also made it much more tangible particularly for British trainers. And sort of like say, like, you know, I don't know if you remember all that stuff, but it was very Americanized. It was very sort of like drawn out, like things that could be taught in like 20 minutes was a 4-hour video course that you had to sit through. Yeah. And so I just got down to the nuts and bolts of it, you know?
Yeah, I was a Czechie back in the day. Yeah.
And you know, I'm not knocking them, because I wouldn't have become who I became if it wasn't for their influence on me.
Definitely. Yeah.
But like all things, you know, and I'm sure there are people out there saying, "Oh, Dax taught me this back in the day, but I've adapted it now, and it's so much clearer now," right? Because we learn things and we add to things. But yeah, so I did that, and then what I started to notice, on top of building my educational side of stuff for trainers, is that I was kind of getting more and more in the public eye for things like the results I was getting with clients. So my company was the very first company in the UK to offer a money back guarantee on a personal training result. No one else at the time, no one had the courage to do that. And as I remember it, it was so simple. Like it was drop a clothing size in a month, which now is like ridiculous. And like, you know, but everyone was in awe of that. Like, drop a clothing size in a month or your money back. And people were like, what, you would really give your money back? And like, yeah, of course would, right? And I trained my team were all crapping themselves when we said this, because I said, well, obviously, if the company's giving the money back, your split of that money is going to go back as well. And they're like, oh God, I don't know if we want to do that. It's terrifying. I'm like, guys, it's a month. Like, if you can't drop a clothing size in a month, like, we're not doing a very good job. But up until that point, trainers hadn't really been held accountable for the results. They were basically selling, the product was the hour. It wasn't the result. The result was this kind of amorphous promise, but that we never really wanted to sign our name to. It was like, yeah, I can get you great results. Will you guarantee it? Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, right. So we're the first to guarantee it. Then I took that guarantee down to, it eventually dropped down to drop a clothing size in 14 days. And then that increased to drop a clothing size in 14 days or double your money back. And so, you know, kind of that was a very new thing then. That became terrifying to some people. And even other trainers that were watching and saying, how the hell can you even get involved in that kind of guarantee? There's just too many variables, but we did it. And then I personally got to the point where if you work with me personally, because I was a lot more expensive than my trainers, of course, if you work with me personally and you didn't get the results that were promised, you'd get 10x your money back. And so, you know, kind of that was... Wow. That was just a paradigm shifter for everybody around me. They were like, my clients, you know, A-listers, celebs, actors, actresses, Grammy winners, even royalty. So, you know, kind of a lot of different people who, and to be honest, those people were never interested in the guarantee. They were interested in working with someone who they perceived to be at the top of their game and who had extreme confidence in what they were offering. And I'd always say, like, oh, the guarantee holds for you too. And they're like, the guarantee was useful to the degree that it pointed out how confident you are in what you're doing. That's all I needed to know. I don't really need, you know, with the levels of money that some of my clients, literally billionaires, and with the level of money they got, they don't need their money back or their money 10x or whatever because we were a millimeter short on their goal, right?
Yeah.
But look, I guess you could summarize all of that up in pushing boundaries and expectations is one of the things I've always done with the businesses, regardless of kind of where I've taken them. It's always been about pushing the boundaries, but also pushing the boundaries in a way that don't just or that doesn't just come across as some sales gimmicky kind of spiely thing. It's like, if you screw this up, potentially you're 10xing somebody's money back. Like, one of the things I like to think of when I'm coaching and mentoring trainers and life coaches, which is what I do now, is, you know, ask them, like, would you put your name today to 10x any of your services? And if the answer is no, have a real deep and honest conversation with yourself about what is missing from your process. Right? Usually it's either that maybe you're stretching the promise too big, or the most common challenge there is that most people, they're taking on the wrong clients and they know they are. They're taking it's what I used to call kind of WAP marketing, wallet and a pulse. Like, the client says yes and they have the money to pay for it, so you say yes, and yet they've got no real intention of following through. They're not in the place to work with you yet, really. They haven't qualified to work with you. But yeah, if you know, and if the 10x question is too high, well, 2x. If you had to end up let's say your client pays you $1,000, and if they don't get the result, you have to give them back 2. What would your feeling around that be? And if you go, oh shit, I wouldn't do that, then really be honest with yourself. What's the answer to that? Why not?
Yeah, I guess once you're confident with that as well, then it's counterintuitive because it actually gets more buy-in from the client if you're offering that service. But I like that kind of prerequisite to that is that you've got to be super confident that you would put your name to 10x back,
right?
Because otherwise you aren't going to deliver, I guess.
Yeah, and I think one of the big challenges is that when you think about the current way that we market PT or coaching of any kind, right? Because I've branched out more into coaching in general. Like I'll come to your question about like where the hell has Dax Moy been, kind of thing. But coaching in general, this idea that we're expecting the client to take a risk, to take a punt on us, right? You don't know me, we've never met. You might have read a few of my blog posts, you've seen a few of my videos, or maybe you've just come across an ad for me and this is the first time and the ad looked good and it persuaded you to reach out. But whatever the case is, what we're kind of saying, we're standing there with cap in hand and saying, look, just throw some cash in that, right? And trust me, I know what I'm doing. But then like when you get to the well, would you 5x that? Would you 2x that? Would you 10x that? They go, oh, don't know if I do that. Well, trust me, I know what I'm doing. Kind of loses some of its strength, doesn't it? Then you think, and yet, you know, kind of most trainers that I speak to still aren't even at the point where, you know, that was about 20 years ago that I did that the UK's first ever guaranteed results, right? 20 years ago, and even today, most trainers won't do that.
When I first time I saw that was from Graham and Steve. Now I know where they got it.
Right.
So I can see now everything you were just talking about was something that definitely we put into the profit business, and it worked like to a large scale. And you could, it's hard to get your head around at first, I think, for coaches, but it's essential, absolutely essential if you're going to, first of all, do a good service for your clients, but then also have a successful business off the back of that.
Yeah.
And I think there was tons in like. It was good for people to hear that you went from £5 an hour, 2 hours a week, to literally at one point, weren't you the highest paid PT in
I was the highest paid PT in the UK for 15 years straight.
15 years straight. See, I didn't know that bit.
Yeah.
And going from that £5 an hour all the way up to there, I think it's important for people to hear that journey and what it takes to get to that level.
Yeah.
And
so by the time I stopped doing a PT in the way most people think of PT, my clients were 50K a year, and there was no hours on that. So kind of if they chose, sometimes I wouldn't see my clients for 3 months because they'd be on the road traveling and at concerts and all that kind of stuff. But equally, it could also mean flying me out somewhere and working with them intensely doing something else, right? So obviously they'd pay the extras, like they'd pay the flights and they'd pay the hotels and all that kind of stuff. But their fee was inclusive of the 50K. So yeah, from £5 an hour to 50K a year is quite a bit of a difference.
Wow. It's quite a journey, yeah. There's a lot of drive. Then when just listening to you, I was just sat back listening to that whole story, and you can hear the drive in there. That when you get to one point, you just go, right, what's next? What's next? What's next? When somebody tells you no, you go, I'll get a yes. And
that was definitely one of the core things. Certainly the earlier themes as well. It was one of the core early themes. I think part of that I do owe to my military background, which was, you know, you have an objective, you have an aim. Sometimes you're not gonna be at your best. Sometimes you'd be days of no sleep. You might be carrying 150 pounds on your back. You may be freezing cold or scared or lost in the dark or any number of things. And it's just like, okay, so the thing that you wanted to happen hasn't happened. So now what? And you go, okay, take a deep breath, crack on with the next phase, get to it again. It was like head down, arse up, and go. Well, that's a little bit what it was like in the early stages. Like, and I'm still like that. I'm a bit, you could say a little bit bloody minded in that if somebody tells me no, I just figure out for every one no you give me, I'm gonna find like 100 reasons yes. I go, okay, so. But all I need is the specifics behind the no. If you say because you're not qualified enough or you're not knowledgeable enough, I go, okay, what would have to happen in order for me to sit in front of you and say, and you look at me and go, God, this guy knows his shit. And as soon as you tell me, I'll go, all right, next time we meet, I'll know all that stuff that you just said that you needed. Right. And that's how I've approached all of it. Like if you tell me no to something today, I'll do my best to find out what the rationale is behind the no, and then I'll address that, and then I'll come back, and you might tell me no for another reason next. Right.
Such an important quality to have, that resilience, I think, whether it's in business or just in life. Is that a bit of a double-edged sword as well? Has there been some kind of downsides to that while you've been growing the business? Was there positives?
Yeah, absolutely. You can sometimes you can find yourself chasing the goal for the sake of chasing the goal, as opposed, you can forget at times what you were chasing it for. And that's certainly happened to me a few times, And it was actually this kind of ties in neatly with your question about that you opened with, about where the hell's Dax been.
Yeah.
4 years ago, I closed my studios down. Literally, they were successful. They were making money. They weren't at their zenith. They'd kind of dropped off from their peak. I had staffing issues, and to be fair, it wasn't all just staff. I was at that time, I was going through. That was probably the hardest phase of my PTSD. So I kind of got PTSD as a result of being in the tsunami and kind of what happened there. And so I wasn't at my personal best, and my team weren't who I needed them to be in order to kind of make up for the deficit of what I would normally put in. So it's not a blame thing; it's just the reality. That's the fact. And so I pushed with that for about 3 or 4 years with the team, because this PTSD thing went on for a long time, about 10 years. And I pushed for quite a while with the team, and I knew I wasn't where I wanted to be. I knew they weren't where I wanted them to be, and I was pushing and pushing and pushing and going, not taking no for the answer, and saying, oh, I'm going to make this work. And then 4 years ago, I just woke up and just went, I'm getting up every day to go to a place that I'm not really enjoying going to work with people that I'm not really enjoying working with. And in fact, it was costing me money to keep the business going, where all my other businesses, like everything that was entirely on me, like my one-to-one coaching and consulting, my online businesses, all of that was hyper profitable. And my bricks and mortar business was still profitable to a degree, but not if I tallied up the amount of effort that I put into it. It wasn't commensurate with the effort. I was just like, why the hell are you doing this? Why are you waking up every day? And the answer I kind of came up with was what we just said there, really. That bloody minded push is because I'd set it like a goal, and it was like, fuck it, I'm not going to drop the ball on this. I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to let this beat me. And I think by not letting it beat me, I was letting it beat me, if you know what I mean. Like I was waking up every day as a person I didn't want to meet myself as. I was tired. I was despondent at times, because of the PTSD I was suffering as well, with elements of depression and kind of various psychological kind of impacts on that. And that aspect of work wasn't making things better. In fact, it was making it worse. Wake up every morning and go, fuck, I've got to go there.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I'd always promised myself I'd never do. I'd never ever be the guy who was going to a place he didn't want to go to do things he didn't want to do. And I had no excuse for it, because I was earning more than enough money, and I had more than enough money saved that I didn't have to do that. And yet I was just kind of like blinkered into this, well, keep doing it. And to be honest, it's closing the studio is one of the best things I ever did. And it did what it was supposed to do for me for the time that I did it. I wouldn't have achieved half of the subsequent things that I went on to achieve if I hadn't have done it. But I should have probably closed the studio. I closed it 4 years ago. I should have probably closed it 6-7 years ago. When I spent too much time not enjoying it. And yeah, that's why Dax Moy has not really been on the PT front. And that was the running of the studio part. And in terms of coaching trainers, I think I had a very similar kind of thing going on with that as well, in that it stopped being enjoyable because, and this is gonna sound really, really judgy, but it's really not meant to be. It's just I don't have better words to express it at the moment. I got fed up of whingers, PTs who, and that's not. I know that is a kind of a judgy thing for a coach to say, because I pride myself on my coaching and not being judgmental. But it's not a reflection on them. It's a reflection on how I felt at the time. Those same people coming into my life today, I probably wouldn't call a whinger. but at the time I did. And it was people that would sign up for mentoring, not use half the stuff that they were taught, and go away and then kind of either 3 months later complain to you directly that it's not working, or they'd go away into the world and say, oh, I did that Dax Moy stuff, it was crap, it didn't work, right? You go, but you didn't actually do it. You didn't do the stuff. You didn't apply any of it. All you did was every week miss your calls and then tell me why something won't work for your particular area or your client base. But, you know, and I think there was always a lot of, I think there still is a lot of that in PT, in kind of
still, yeah.
And it's understandable to a degree, because no one, I don't think anybody I know as a PT got into PT to be a businessman or woman, right? A business person. And they got into it because they loved training themselves. And they thought, well, you know what? If you love training yourself and there's a way to take what you love and share that with someone else and get paid for it, yeah, why not? Yeah. And most of us, I call it the kind of the wilderness years of you know, those first nascent years of being a trainer, where you literally know nothing about marketing. They're probably all of us our happiest years, even if no matter how many clients we've got, they're our happiest years, because you know, fuck all you are is still enamored with the training, and you're enamored with, oh, I got a new client, and that new client might only be paying you 20 quid, but you go, oh, I've got another new client. You're really excited.
Yeah.
After about 18 months to 36 months, in around about that period, someone tells you that they're, you know, you notice that someone's making a lot more money than you, that they're driving a flashier car than you, that they've got more clients than you. And you're like, how the hell is he doing that? How the hell is she doing that? And if I've been going on this marketing thing, and I've been mentoring under this guy or this girl or whatever, and you go, oh, maybe I should do some of that. And usually it's around about the time you get into mentorship, which is just another kind of aspect of saying, follow someone else's blueprint for their success. Around about that time is when everything starts to get really serious for you, where everything becomes about, you know, kind of, excuse expression to your listeners, but dick measuring with other people. It's like kind of how much you're spending on ads, what your click-through rates, how many visitors you get into your websites, how many signups you got last month. And it all gets serious, and you stop enjoying being the trainer. Like, so it's like you don't have enough time for that, and particularly because other trainers, the mentor trainers, are very often telling you that you should spend more time working in your business on your business than in it, right? Which is what nearly every kind of mentor will tell you. And it wipes away the whole kind of the reason for being a trainer in the first place, right? When you think about that, you should spend more time working on your business than in it. It's like, but I love being a trainer and I don't love being an internet marketer. So why would I want to spend more time in it? And they go, because if you spend more time on it, then you can hire more people in, and that'll make you more money. And you go, but that still means that I don't spend the time doing the thing that I love. I don't spend time with clients and seeing the changes. And now I've got the extra headache of staff on top of that, and the marketing, right? And it just keeps growing. And like I believe that kind of most people, when they first get into PT and when they first start building their PT business, it's a bit like having a baby, right? It's new, it's tiny, it's kind of this fledgling thing that hasn't really quite found its way. And in the early days, you love it, and you kind of, you know, for want of a better expression, you hug it, you caress it, you're like, oh, I'm gonna make sure it kind of becomes something really awesome in the area.
And you know nothing, just like right. When you start PT.
and exactly the same way as a parent really knows nothing. You might read up a few of the books, right? But you're like, oh, no matter how many books you've read, as a parent, you still got to learn the process of changing the nappy, all of that kind of stuff. And so I think that most people got into when they decided to go from being a PT to, oh, I might create myself this little PT business kind of thing. They have this baby in mind, and they're going to nurture it and grow it and see it evolve and all the rest of it. And I think what ends up happening very often, we're under mentorship, and it's not an individual mentor's fault, because very often they're doing exactly what they promised they would do, which is, hey, I've been successful, I make a load of money, I will share my blueprint with you if you give me X money, right? But unfortunately, what most people tend to miss out on is that blueprint now becomes a map to living someone else's life, all the freedom that you kind of set your business up for. And I always describe it as the 4 Fs. We only set up a PT business for more fun, more freedom, more fulfillment, and more financial success, right? And we drop fun, freedom, and fulfillment, and we just go, oh, well, I'm making more money. right? And we drop all those parts. And instead of having a baby, we end up with a Frankenstein's monster of a business. It's this guy's traffic system. It's that guy's sales objection system. It's this guy's, oh, this is how you should structure a workout. It's this guy's group PT model, right? And instead we end up with like literally Frankenstein's monster, where you've bolted on pieces, right? And the reality is it's much easier to hug a baby than it is to hug Frankenstein's monster, right? We have a lot more desire to keep cradling the baby and watch it grow, right? You know, as you know, before we got on, you both said your parents, you really get the metaphor, right? Maybe someone who's not had kids yet won't get it quite so much. But, you know, somebody hands you kind of, you know, you go to the hospital and here's your bundle of joy, and it's a mini Frankenstein's monster with lots of things just stitched onto it. It's going to be a lot harder for you to kind of feel some kind of connection to that. And I think that's what most PTs have built. And I think I've been really fortunate to know enough about what I want, but more importantly, I think know enough about what I don't want for myself and for my business. I'm not looking for a big multinational conglomerate of 500 chains across the world with 20,000 staff turning over 50 million US per year or whatever, right? Yeah. That's never what I wanted. My models are all kind of boutique businesses, and they're designed around. I reverse engineer all my business. I say, what is the life I want for myself? Now, what do I need to do to get it? Right. So, for example, in my one-to-one coaching business, I only take on 5 clients per year. Right. So that's it. 5 clients per year, and they're a very, very high ticket by most people's standards. Right. So there might be people out there that charge a lot more than me, but by most people's standards, very, very high ticket. And like, the reason why I don't want 200 clients is because I don't want to deal with all the background of dealing with 200 clients, all the emails that you get every week, and all the, oh, I'm having a problem, can we jump on a quick call, and can we do this? Like, I don't want that. But 5 people I can manage brilliantly. So I go, okay, that's that. Then with my retreats business, I'm like, okay, with my retreats, all I want to do is run between 5 and 10 of those per year. Why 5 and 10 of those per year? Because each one of them are between 7 and 10 days, and that's about as much as I want to actually be away from my family every year, right? Kind of between 5 to 10 weeks per year. That's about it. And again, I'm being paid very, very well for those periods of time. And I'm doing something that is really, really meaningful. And then likewise, my online business, I had never really wanted to just kind of keep growing and keep growing and keep growing. And like, how massive can you make this? Like, how many people do I want at any one time with the ability to send me a DM and ask me to sort their shit out? Right. So, okay, that's, and people can say, oh yeah, but Dax, if you make enough money from it, you can get staff. I'm like, okay, but now that staff is contacting me 10 times a day, telling me about all, basically, I'm still dealing with all the stuff that the staff can't deal with, as you guys know, right?
Yeah, very much.
So, you know, you think that when you hire staff that's going to be, oh, it's like having a second me, which means that my work rate is going to drop in half, and it's not. It's nothing like that.
In the beginning as well, there's a lot more. Usually it's more work than you've ever seen before, and then like you said, it's an intense amount of problems forever.
Yeah.
Well, challenges, whatever you want to call them, but that kind of never stops. You just replace the clients with staff. That's all that happens.
Right. And it's a bit like the Stephen Covey. I thought I had the book here. It was here because I was reading it just yesterday again. 7 Habits, right? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Begin with the end in mind. And I just really took that to heart. I'm like, the end for me isn't me at the top of a very tall tower, a skyscraper that I need to house all of my staff and my teams and my sales and my marketing organization, you know, and I'm sat up in the top penthouse as the CEO and everyone reports to me daily. That was never, ever the idea. And not even fractionally like that, not even 0.01% did I ever want that for myself. So, you know, one of the things I really, you know, I grew up very, very poor. And in the early stages, I asked myself, like most people, I kind of wanted a few of the trappings. But I realized it was never about that. I never really wanted that many of the trappings. I bought a brand new car in 2005, a Land Rover Discovery at the time. It was the most expensive one-off purchase I'd ever made at the time. And I still drive that car now, right? It's 2005 Land Rover Discovery. I love it. Like, It's got some dings in it. It's, you know, but I just love the car. I'm not a possession kind of person. But one of the things I told myself way, way, way back in the day, you know, and I think everyone has this to a degree, but not most people haven't really fully thought it out. It's the one day when I make it, I will story, right? One day when I make it, I will. And what I find is that people who are very clear about what they will do tend to kind of be more on a kind of fast track to accomplishing that. People that don't, and people who are vague, like want more of this and I'll live somewhere like that, kind of they tend not to achieve it. For me, one day when I make it, I will was always about travel. It was always about adventures. It was always about going places that as a little boy, I always wanted to see, and that no one in my family had ever been to and were highly unlikely to ever go to because of the wealth status of the family. And so, you know, I've taken my family all around the world. We've driven, you know, 1 month at a time. We've done that a couple of times through the Australian outback. We've swum in, you know, crocodile infested rivers. I've parachuted over the Great Barrier Reef with my daughter on a free fall. I've been to Everest. I've, you know, Thailand 63 times, Cambodia, Vietnam. I've run adventure races through the Amazon rainforest. You name it. Like I've been around. I've done a lot of stuff, and that was what I always said. Like, one day when I make it, I will do these things, and that's what I'm proudest of. I'm not the wealthiest of the coaches. I don't make the most money in the world compared to some of my peers who are a bit more into the marketing game and all that kind of stuff. But I would, you know, it's not the thing to kind of dick measure on, and that's not what I mean to do. But I would say I've probably got one of the best lifestyles out of most of my peers, in that my business is designed to support the life that I want to have and the experience I want to have with my family, as opposed to kind of I fit my family in around work. And you know, we can't do this at the moment because I'm too busy at work, and we can't go there because work needs me. And as soon as we get this product launch out of the way, and as soon like that's not how I've built my life. I've built it the opposite way around. What is the end that I have in mind, and what needs to happen in order to tick that box? So even to this point, several times I've taken what you could say mini retirements or sabbaticals, like 6 months, even a year, where I've just gone, yeah, I'm not going to do anything for the next 6 months. I'm just not going to do any marketing. Any of the products and programs that I'm currently selling, I'll just shelve them for a while. The people that are in those programs, I'll continue to look after, but I won't do any marketing or selling for anybody new at the moment, for the simple reason that I don't want to. That's not the experience I want for the next 6 months of my life.
Just describing those 3 other F's, aren't you? They're the fun, the freedom, the family, like that's all in there. And when we speak to people, that's what they want. Like all the fit pros that we coach and mentor, they kind of come in talking about money, but when you really dig into it, it's the other 3 F's that they want.
Yeah.
And long term, even if they don't have kids now, they're thinking about having kids. Even if they don't have a family, whatever they want in terms of fun and fulfillment, that's what they want.
Yeah.
And that's what they're after, but they haven't designed it yet. It's really good to hear you talk about the design of that.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, that fun, freedom, fulfillment, financial success. But what I see most people getting is frustrated, fearful, and feeling like a failure and a fuck up. So it's the opposite 4 F's, right? That's how most trainers feel.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
Like, and it's a real shame, because it's very easy to, you know, I always describe like the work that we're doing as coaches is it's like wearing 2 hats, and one of them is like architect, right? Kind of you sit with your clients and you help them architect, draw out the plan for their life, and the other one is like an engineer. And what an engineer does is they actually start to assemble things piece by piece, but mostly with the intention of reducing friction and tension points, right? Good engineering is about the reduction of friction. Ultimately, it's like kind of, and a reduction of pressure. So if you're a coach who's working with someone and you're saying, well, hold on, no, we've designed a really good plan, like we've done the architect piece, brilliant, but my clients are stressed, they're overwhelmed, they're not really, they're not really making progress with it. It's because the engineering part hasn't taken into account who the person is and what their capabilities are. And I think that happens for a lot of people. It happens for trainers, it happens for coaches, it happens for people at large. Is that is that they haven't really kind of thought about, actually, these are two different skill sets. Designing a great life and building the great life are two completely, they go together, but they're fairly disparate in terms of what the focus needs to be. Because in designing a great life and being the architect, as you know, an architect starts with a blank piece of paper and just says, hey, what do I want to do today, right? And he can draw it all funky and do whatever he wants. The engineer comes along and says, right, I'm not saying this is impossible, but you've got some really weird curves in there. And if we build it as high as you want to build it, that tower block is going to fall down. So we need to do this, and we need to reduce pressure here, and we need to reduce friction here. And eventually, when the architect and the engineer work together, you end up with a sturdy construction that will stay up.
Yeah.
And most people aren't doing that.
Yeah. That reduction in stress thing, it just jogged my memory as to one of the biggest takeaways from your course. We put it into every review session after that course, I remember. Thinking about reducing stress rather than adding more stuff all the time. And we always used to say to people, how are you finding things? How stressed are you? And if they were a 10, your goal was to get them to a 9. Just to take it down by a little bit, just to try and create some more space for them, less friction, so that they could think a little bit more clearly. And we really want to get into that at some point in this conversation about the brain and how that's put together, and how understanding that better can help you serve the clients better as well. And that was, I remember that vividly. Reduce.
Yeah, it's such an important point, right? Subtraction always comes before addition. Like 99.99999% of our clients and our customers and everybody else are already coming to us overwhelmed, which means that the bucket's already full. And then in our best intentions, we go, right, here's what we're going to get you to do. We're going to do this. And you go, okay, so I was already overwhelmed, and thanks for all this extra stuff. If you want to put something in, you have to take out at least an equivalent amount, but ideally a lot more, because you're trying to get them back to the point where they're not overwhelmed before you begin the process of adding anything new. And most people just aren't doing that. And that's true on a physiological basis. It's true on a neurological basis. It's true on a kind of, on literally every kind of aspect you can think of, whether that be our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings, how our endocrine system is working, how our digestive system is working, how our muscular system is working. It's true across the board. Take away first. And most people, unfortunately, they jump straight into, what can I put in? What can I add to this person's life? Yeah. And it's always well intended, because we're trying to show value. But actually, the best value that you can show a person who is coming to you already overwhelmed, lacking confidence, and all the rest of it, is to actually reduce their overwhelm. Just take away the things that they think. It was one of the reasons why I started taking time limits out of the PT at my studios. And my son's a PT, my youngest son, and I say the same thing. He sells sessions to his clients, like packages of sessions. Yeah. They say, how long is it? Don't know how long a session is, right? And they're like, well, why not? And that guy over there selling by the hour, he goes, I might be, in the first couple of weeks, you might be coming to me for 20, 25 minutes. That's it. As we do what is necessary. So I will always do what is necessary for you to make the kind of progress you want to make. But you have to understand that you being here with me means that you don't know how much is necessary, because if you knew, you wouldn't have needed a PT. Yeah. Right? You don't know how much is necessary, and you're probably doing too much. You're going to the gym for 90 minutes, 3 or 4 times a week, stressing out and like sitting in heavy traffic and coming straight from work and going home feeling exhausted. I might just have you coming to see me 3 times a week for 20 minutes for that first week. You might only see me an hour in total. Yeah. But you'll go home having had the stimulus. You'll go home feeling refreshed. You'll go home looking forward to the next session. Right? The next session might be 22 minutes. And again, it's not because he's only planning out like it will only be that. If somebody comes to him and they're already pretty fit and they're already done a lot of conditioning, it might be a lot longer than that. But take away before you put in. It's such an important factor.
Yeah. While we're on that, Dax, I think I'm just trying to think of like what a listener's questions might be as they listen to this, and I'm going backwards a little bit here, but I think a lot of our listeners would love to know when you were the most expensive PT in the UK for that length of time. What did a PT session look like with you versus a normal PT? Like there must be a clear difference, and you've mentioned the word value a few times as well.
Yeah.
Try and paint that picture for people, because I think listeners are going to sit here and think, what on earth was that guy doing?
Yeah. So every session, regardless of your reason for being there, would have a coaching component anyway, right? So kind of a psycho-emotive coaching component. But so we that coaching component would start during what most people would call the warm-up, but we would spend quite a lot of time on mobility. So no session would begin until we've done mobs, and mobs would be there's two components. So there's unloaded mobs and then there's loaded mobs. Actually, you could say there's three components, right? Because there's unloaded slow mobs, there's light loaded fast mobs, and then there's slightly heavier loaded. And they're all based in PNF, so proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. So most people think of PNF as just the PNF stretching.
Yep.
PNF is an entire system that most people don't even know about, that goes from internal rotation to external rotation, adduction to abduction, flexion to extension, circumduction, like adding all the possible movements that a joint can go through before you load it. Yep. And so kind of this is always part of the neural mapping that we would take our clients through, so that basically their brain remembered everything that a joint could do before you ask it to do it under any serious load.
Yep.
So that would be how, you know, so for example, simple unloaded mobility followed by, I don't know if you saw any of the videos or if I ever did it with any of the guys down at the gym there, but kind of use like a big pole and kind of it'd be swinging around, be like it would look a bit like bow staff martial arts, but it was done in a very specific way. After that, it would be PNF using a light to moderate medicine ball, kind of including like internal, external rotations, flexion, extensions, even how you placed your feet to pivots and how you extended the spine, how you flex the spine in different positions. So all of that would be part of what most people would call the warm-up. Mm-hmm. Then we'd take people upstairs usually to our therapy couches, and any aspects of specific PNF stretching that needed to be done to unlock the client's posture. Usually that would be kind of hip flexors, kind of, you know, 1 and 2 joint hip flexors like rec fem, psoas, iliacus. We're kind of unlocking that on most people because of their sedentary lifestyles, while at the same time using neuromuscular activation on a lot of the opposing groups, like switching on gluteus maximus, switching on aspects of the upper thoracic erectors, like using kind of, again, PNF techniques to get the right balance between kind of how flexors and extensors were working mostly.
Yeah.
And then from there, then we'd go down. There'd be a body weight component for all of our clients that they would go through, and that was just kind of mastering the fundamental movements of the squats, the lunges, the pushes, the pulls, and all of that kind of stuff, but only with body weight. And then, if necessary, getting into the more specific aspects of their programs. You know, if they were here for hypertrophy, if they were here for fat loss, and so on and so forth. But it was that first bit, probably, you know, if for argument's sake, let's say we're training a client for 45 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes of that workout, of that training session, would be the preparation for activity, right? So most people would only do about 20 minutes of the actual, what most people call a workout.
Yeah,
that was it. We'd stimulate, you know, every now and then we'd be doing like a bit more of a specialized hypertrophy. Like if we're working with actors who needed to pack on a lot of muscle really quickly, theirs would take a different format, and volume and time under tension would kick in a lot more. But for most people, even your generic hypertrophy kind of people, you know, just saying they want to look a bit bigger for the summer and kind of they want to gain some mass, volume wasn't ever really the thing that we focused on. It was more the preparation, so that it's a bit like the takeaway to before you add, right? If there's two ways to kind of think about getting to where you want to go. One is to sit in the car, rev the engine, you know, push on the gas and rev the engine as hard as you possibly can. The other one is to release the brakes. The way we would help our clients gain the kind of result we wanted to get is we would help them release all the brakes. Most of those brakes would be psychological, endocrinological, and somewhat neurological, in the kind of their nervous system would be holding on too tight to let you open up a certain muscle. You couldn't open up the muscle, use it across its full range. You couldn't expect the same physiological result from that muscle, right? So we would say, let's spend more of the session releasing the brakes, so that when we do hit the gas, kind of we just accelerate straight out of the blocks. And we would see that we'd have clients who would like double their strength from the beginning of a session to the end of a session, like literally double. And then when I brought in mind map and body map, you guys obviously did mind map, but the body map system is the physical aspect of the same stuff. And when we would do the same work there, looking at the visual system, the proprioceptive system, the vestibular system, using all of that to reduce friction and drag on the body, and people would suddenly be doing things that they never thought they would do, like people who hadn't touched their toes in 10 years being able to do so after 30 seconds of doing some of these drills. It can be that dramatic. So yeah, that's without getting specific on any one training program. If we're sort of like overarching, like what was different about my training sessions to most people's, that would probably hit most of the points. But along the way there, we're also doing a lot of what most people would then call life coaching within that, more releasing the brakes in their life, like what's getting in the way for you at the moment, what's causing you stress, what are your biggest frustrations right now, what's going on, like. And these are all things that come out naturally in a PT session anyway, right? It normally goes something like this: how's your week been? Don't ask me about the week. And people start, right? But the difference is we would have a plan about where to take those conversations, and it would turn into some kind of architecting and some kind of engineering that would then go, the client would walk out there going, wow, I've got a plan for what to do with that. So I'm not just coming here and getting a workout, I'm getting the mental kind of workout and the mental preparation to go and deal with the shit that's causing me to be overeating in the first place, to be stress eating, to not be sleeping very well, whatever it is. And so it'd be a much more, it's a bit of an overplayed word these days, but a much more holistic approach to training.
Yeah, that was really good to hear. The exercise technician side of you talk there, because I think like I've always regarded you as a really high level coach in terms of the mindset and everything, but I always forget that you're a very high level physical technician as well. So to hear the level that you go into just for the stretching and mobility as well, I bet there's not a lot of trainers do that. I bet they say, the client stretches for 5 minutes and then off we go.
Yeah,
that was super detailed what you went
into. And that was definitely one of the things that set our company apart. It was, I later became known as like the mental coach side of things, but no, that came much later. That came, in the early stage, I was very technical. I was very much the technician. Like I said, very much down the lines of Czech and Gray, and Tiberio and a few people like that. And just, kind of really, really applying. I tried to apply everything that I knew of neuroscience and endocrinology to my clients, like literally everything. But obviously that can become unwieldy. I don't know if you remember back to when you were first learning Czech stuff, right? There's like 500 tests.
Yeah.
Kind of what you do with the little finger, and like there's so many tests. And so what I got very, very good at very quickly, and I do think I put this down to my military background. Military are really good at distilling principles rather than getting caught up in methodologies. So one of the things that I've always been able to do is distill all of my experiences into principles. And so one of the things, people have heard me say it talk after talk is, methods are many, principles but few. Methods often change, principles never do, right? And I'm always looking for the constant that even if a new methodology comes along in another couple of years, I can look at it and go, all right, I like the method, and that's in support of this principle. But everything that we did and everything I taught my staff to do was be working toward a principle every time. And literally we'd be on the studio floor, and I would stop a coach while they're working with a client and say, which principle is that particular thing that you're doing with them right now? Which principle does that meet? And they'd be able to tell me, it's meeting this one, it's meeting that one. Right, cool, carry on. Right. And that's how that they, so many of the trainers that worked with me over the years went on to do kind of really, really good things. Because set up really good companies and training companies and all kinds of stuff. And it's because of that approach to principles. Yeah.
I think we see something similar as well with a lot of the trainers that worked as a ProFit trainer doing great things.
Yeah,
with very similar principles and values to what they were taught with the ProFit systems. And then that's obviously come from working with people like yourself, and that's all passed down the line. So I think that's all good stuff. We want to get into a couple of really specific areas. I think Matt and I wanted to talk about today was the brain. And because when you started to unpack that on the mind mapping course, that was many, many light bulb moments going off for not just me, I know, but every person in that room, and how that affects training. But starting with just coaching in general, because some of the things that have stuck with me from your teaching and learning from you has been the definition of coaching and knowing what the aim of a session is. So when a client comes in, even just the small thing you said about how long does a session last? Well, as long as the client's got what they need, it kind of depends. Might be 20 minutes, might be 30 minutes. That changed the game for me, knowing that what I was there to do was to serve the client, not to deliver an exercise program or not to write a program and then get through it, make sure the client got through it at all costs. Like, it wasn't that. It was to try and serve the client and focus on what they needed today. What did they need to walk out of the session feeling better? So can we go into that a little bit? Your definition of coaching. What do you think coaching is?
A coach, for me, coaching is really about being in the first instance, being a surrogate brain for when your client's brain isn't online, right? So, stress, overwhelm, any high level of emotion, including what many people would call positive emotions. I don't think of emotions as positive or negative, but I do talk about them as light side and dark side emotions in terms of how they may make you feel, right? But no emotion is a negative emotion. Even the ones that we think of as negative are there to serve us and tell us something about our immediate environment and how we're engaging with it that is working or not working, right? That's what they're there for. So if we start like bitch slapping emotions because we say, oh, that's a negative emotion, what we're kind of saying is ignore the signals that are coming to you from your environment and pretend they don't exist. And that's not a game I like to play on my clients. I prefer them to know, for example, an example I use is you're driving down the motorway and the little gas light comes on, it goes ding and lets you know you've probably got about 50 miles left in the tank, right? But in your mind, you go, oh, I don't like the sound of that. I've only got 50 miles left in the tank. So you pull out a little Sharpie marker and you draw over the little kind of orange light so that you can't see it. And so that it temporarily go, oh, brilliant, life's good again. There's no orange light. 50 miles from now, you're breaking down on the motorway and you're going, oh, why does this always happen to me? Right? We need the signal that the gas is about to run out in order to preempt the problem. And that's all emotions do. They give us a signal about something that's happening in our environment, and they offer us an invitation to address that, right? And for as long as we don't address it, we'll continue to feel the emotion. That's how it works, right? So that I guess that's the first thing that I would say is a coach is helping our clients to understand things about themselves that they may not understand because their brain isn't in the right place to process certain information. So we act as a surrogate brain temporarily. And it's important to understand then that when we're acting as a surrogate brain, we're not acting as a brain that makes decisions for other people. We're acting as the brain that can bring the other brain back online. What do you need to hear? What do you need to feel? What do you need to experience in order for whatever level of threat that you're currently feeling to come back down here, for the parts of your brain like your amygdala and stuff to shut up, and the other parts, the thinking parts of the brain, to come back online and go, oh, I can see it now. I can see the way, right? So we're a surrogate brain ultimately, but with the intention of helping our clients to bring the most skillful and most important parts of their brain back online for that problem, for that solution, for that situation that they're currently facing, right? And so sometimes it's highly appropriate for them to be extremely angry. Sometimes it's highly appropriate for them to be extremely aggressive, right? Sometimes it's highly appropriate for them to puff up and get in someone's face and say, back the fuck up or I'll knock you out, right?
Yeah.
If that person has just approached your family and they're kind of with a knife or a stick, sometimes that's the appropriate thing. So it's not about changing inappropriate emotions, right? A coach is there to say, what's the experience you're having? What's the experience you want to have? Let me help you get back to being the version of yourself you need to be in order to have that experience. Not let me tell you what to do.
Yeah.
Right now, and so there's a big distinction, and it's, you know, it's not, the thing is, it's not that easy, rolls off the tongue kind of, you know, a coach is a facilitator of change, like you'll read from some of the coaching organizations. I don't disagree with that, but I think that a coach is a facilitator of change because they are helping the client to get their brain back online and use it more skillfully than perhaps they are right now.
Yeah, brilliant. That's really good. And I like the bit about, you know, you said about emotions. All of them are welcome, aren't they? All of them are very welcome. Like whatever comes to the table comes to the table, and we don't want people to block those out. And
right.
Yeah, I really like that. And
just because you're feeling extreme anger at the moment, it doesn't mean you have to walk out of your house and punch the first person you see in the face.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Kind of, that's not the invitation. The anger is an invitation. Like every emotion that we experience. So anger is a good example, right? Anger doesn't just happen. There's an actual neurophysiological reason for anger to happen. It's very, very simple. And it pretty much falls into two categories. Something that I have that is of value to me is being taken from me, or something that I want that is of value to me is being kept from me, right? That's the basis of all anger. Something that I have is being taken, something that I want is being kept, right? If we experience a little bit of that, we experience it as frustration. If we experience a lot of that, or it goes on for a long period of time, we experience it as anger. If we experience a lot of that, and particularly in the short term, if we get flooded with a lot of that happening right now, we experience it as rage, right? But so it's the rage family of emotions that has little babies called frustration and anger, right? But it's triggered by the same core idea, which is something I want that is of value to me being kept from me, or something that I have that is of value to me being taken from me. And that, if you want to feel anger, that's how you feel it, right? If you as a coach want to unpack anger, and that makes life a lot easier. You ask the client, so what do you feel is being taken from you at the moment? What do you feel is being kept from you at the moment? Right? That turns anger into a useful tool, as opposed to just this, oh, I don't know, I'm just pissed off and angry. Like, okay, well, let's unpack anger, because it is only happening for those reasons. So let's
paying attention to the emotions rather than just doing ignoring the fuel light. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great. I think people can take a lot from that, because I think that deals with a lot of coaches and trainers coming in and can, well, I don't think it is wrong to use the word whinge, if I'm being honest. Sometimes we whinge about our clients. I've been there myself. Yeah. I'll openly say I've whinged about clients, and, you know, I've got sick of people saying the same thing again and again and again and not making any change. But paying attention to how they're feeling could actually unlock the way forwards, and helping them pay attention to it. It's really good. Right. Really good.
And so just on that, there's a bit of a distinction to make there between your emotions and your feelings, right? So your emotions are mostly physiological, endocrinological, right? They just happen to you. Your feelings are what you tell yourself about the emotion that you're having, right? So that's where we start to layer on the story about, I am pissed off, and we start to build it up and build it up and build it up, right? So you can have an emotion and not necessarily have to have too much of a feeling about that emotion after. Like you just, I'm sure there have been times when you just feel a wave of anger or a wave of sadness or grief even pass over you. And then if you don't stay with it and you don't keep building on the story and build a narrative for it, if you just go, I feel angry or I feel sad or whatever, and you just let yourself have the emotion for a second, sometimes it just goes.
Just let it go.
Right? And what happens with a lot of people is that they sort of like promote is the wrong word, but promoting importance and emotion by turning it into a feeling, by telling every Tom, Dick, and Harry that they meet how shit their day is and who did wrong by them. And right now they're rehearsing over and over and over again. Well, that's more of a feeling rather than an emotion. Doesn't mean that they're not linked. They are, but you know, kind of, you got to be careful, or careful is the wrong word, skillful about how you describe what you're feeling and who you describe it to. Are you describing it to someone who's going to kind of help you return back to your human self, or are you going to describe it to a person who's going to push you more into those animalistic tendencies and have you go full reptile, so to speak? You know what I mean? Like, are you going to tell it to a person who's going to go, yeah, right, they should never have done that, and they're really like, are you going to share it with that person? and further devolve, or are you going to kind of share it with somebody else, or share it with yourself first and say, if I'm being really, really, like, I sent somebody an apology yesterday for the night before. I wasn't as professional as I would like to. It wasn't a client. It was I'm back in green again. I'm an Army Cadet Force instructor. I teach kids as a volunteer.
Wow.
And kind of one of the storemen who's I just perceived that he was being a pain in the arse, and I kind of let him know. It was kind of a bit unwarranted, and I sent him an email the next day and said, look, that's not on you. Like, my frustration was genuine, but I consider myself to have been unprofessional, and I acted at a standard that I don't expect of myself. Here's my sincere apology, right? And he wrote me back. He said, that's the first time I've had one of those in 30 years. And kind of in doing this job, much appreciated. I didn't take it as personal as maybe you think I did, but really appreciate you reaching out and sharing that apology with me, right? So we know ourselves, when if we give ourselves the time to be with the emotion, we know what the emotion is trying to tell us. We know whether it was justified, and we also know whether kind of an apology or some kind of reparation is due from that. It's normally when we take an emotion and we turn it into a feeling by communing with 20 people who go, yeah, you're right. And not only that, you shouldn't have just said that he was a pain in the arse. You should call him a dick and told him to fuck off. And those people are supporting the version of ourselves we don't want to be.
Yeah.
And that's part of the coaching that I do with my clients. Is I get it. Like, we're all going to feel the emotions, including anger at times, and we're all going to have little outbursts.
Yeah.
It is during that outburst did you outburst in a way that you go, that was who I wanted to be? Or did you outburst in a way that go, yeah, that's not how I want to see myself?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then repair it, fix it. And not even for the other person, fix it for yourself. Just go, I know I did something that isn't in keeping with who I said I was going to be. And so let me go and repair it, not for the other person. If it benefits them in some way, that's great. But I'm repairing this for me.
When I'm listening to that, I'm just thinking about how much energy that must save you as a person, not having to deal with that all the time, like everything rising up all the time. That's the releasing the brakes, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's then giving you more time, more energy.
So that interaction had been on my mind. It only happened at 10 o'clock at night. I sent an email the next day at lunchtime, right? So it wasn't long, but from getting home, going to bed, I was thinking about it. The next morning, I was thinking about it. As soon as I sent the email, regardless of what came back to me, even if he said, yeah, you were a complete dick and I hate you forevermore, right? I can go, yeah, but I did what, like, it's not about him saying, I forgive you and all's well between us, right? It's about me saying, that's not who I am, and I need to fix this straight away. And as soon as I did that, drew a line under it, it was gone. It was really nice to see that he took my apology well, but it wasn't a requirement. It wasn't that didn't have to happen.
Yeah.
And so, that's an example though of skillfully being with our emotions, skillfully using our brain. My frustrations with the fellow were genuine. They were driven by some stuff that was happening that were actual genuine things. I deserved to be frustrated in that, given what was triggering the environment. I didn't deserve the experience of myself being that version of myself to another person. And that's really what that was about. I didn't deserve that for me. He didn't deserve it either, but I didn't deserve it. Yeah.
And that is a skill, isn't it? That's something that if everybody learned that skill, it takes the brakes off, and it allows them to go and pursue the life that they want and be the architect and the engineer to reduce some of the stress. Right. Yeah. Brilliant. Woo. Right. There's a lot of content there. I'm just looking to see if we have any more kind of questions we want to dig into today. Matt, is there anything that we think we haven't covered that we wanted to cover?
I think what would be great is, having just listened to all that sort of detail and insight there, Dax, for the person listening to this now that's 1 to 2 years into running a PT business, where do they start with trying to implement some level of coaching or elements of coaching into their business? They might have got to the point now where they feel a bit more technically confident with training people. They might be getting some results. They might have sort of ticked a few boxes on that side of things, but they're sat listening to this side of it going, I've not got a clue. Where do they start? How do they maybe apply some of these principles that you've talked about? Any sort of, dare I say, simple tips to get them started?
Well, look,
take that wherever you want.
Every single holy, I've read the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the kind of Guru Sahib Granth. I've read lots and lots and lots and lots of spiritual and religious texts. Like literally read them cover to cover. That's one of my nerdy geek things that I do. I read a hell of a lot. Every single one of those books has a version of the truth will set you free. And so one of the things I'm always saying to my clients is, if you really want to if you want things to change for the better, start telling the truth. So how you can start implementing this is you can start telling the truth about the experiences you're having with clients. Like, if you're really, really honest, what are the type of clients that make you shit yourself? You go, oh God, I'm so glad my boss gave that client to the other person, because I wouldn't have known what to do or say in that one, right? We've all had those clients, right? You hear later on that they're I'll just pick some random things, but they're bipolar, or they were sexually assaulted when they were younger, or we're not there as coaches as therapists, right? But these are still parts of those people's experience that they're bringing to the coaching experience with us. So, and a lot of us kind of shit ourselves when that comes up. So what, start with the truth. Who is it that I shit myself from if I'm offered that as a client, right? Who is it that I've consistently taken on, and yet if I'm really, really honest with myself, I've dropped the ball on. Like, I've not been able to serve them in the way I want. And it doesn't have to be a blame thing, right? As in, I drop the ball on them. Like, a lot of the time, I drop the ball on clients because something within me knew I shouldn't have taken them on in the first place, and yet I went into savior mode and took them on and went, no, I can do this.
Yeah.
Everyone else has failed them, but I'll get them there, right? And that confidence was sometimes didn't have enough of a foundation, enough of a basis to it to say, how do you know you're going to get them there? What is it that makes you so sure, right? And so what you're starting to do by following this process is to start to kind of write yourself your own curriculum for what you need to know more of, or know more in depth, or gain more experience in, or this is what I've done throughout my entire career. Like, I don't have a degree, and yet my knowledge kind of easily supersedes most people with masters and even PhDs in some of the fields I'm in. I don't say that from a braggadocio perspective. I say it because people with those qualifications have told me, oh my God, you put me and the course leaders that I've been on to shame, like, it with this knowledge, right? Which is always nice to hear. But it's always interesting when I think all I did was build myself a curriculum or curricula around topics that I knew that I wasn't meeting my full potential in, right? And that starts with telling yourself the truth. Instead of telling yourself you're shit hot and you've got everything in the bag and you know everything about everything, just go, I really, really, really don't know enough about endocrinology at the moment. And kind of, because this was my progression. So for me, in the early stages, I told you I started out like as a PT, but more like a military PTI. It was about how hard you could work them. My next evolution was like, well, yeah, that's great, but I'm losing some clients to people who are clearly, they're too sore between sessions and it's not what they wanted. So like, okay, so let me learn a little bit more. I didn't just want to be the 3 sets of 10 guy in the gym. I never wanted to be him. So the next thing was to kind of get down that check route and learn more about the finer side of exercise prescription, right? I went, okay. So I got down that route. And then it was like, well, we're getting so much better results from our clients now. However, we've still got clients who, that tell me they're doing all the right things, and I believe that kind of are, but they still aren't getting the results. So what might that be? And I went, it's nutrition. And okay, so now I'll study everything I can about nutrition, and I created the elimination diet, which was, set a couple of million downloads by the time I put that one to bed. And went, okay, so the nutrition is going so far, but there are still some people like who come along to my studios and work that even with the type of training we do, even with the kind of nutrition we do, still aren't getting results. It's endocrinology. So that next, right. So now we need to figure out sleep and wake cycles and what nutrients are causing you to hold on to weight, and not what nutrients are causing you to not sleep well enough, and then we'd figure all that out. Okay, but there's still, right, and we were okay, so you can be eating the right foods in the right quantities, taking on the right calorific amounts, burning the right amount of calories, getting your sleep, and there's still some people that will, most of us experience in the transformational side, we call it transformation, I call it change really, but people that gain great results in 30, 60, 90 days, and then you meet them 30, 60, 90 days later and they've lost it all and they're back to where they started again, right? And it's this cycle. And so then my next question was, well, why does that happen? How can you kind of get to the point where you're on the front cover of a magazine and won a prize for doing so well, and then I meet you 2 months later and you've not only gained back what you lost, you've gained it back with interest. Like, psychology and motivation. So I got into psychology and motivation, studied everything I could on that, and went, well, I'm doing all the kind of setting goals. I even wrote a book on it, The Magic 100. It was best-selling book, right? Setting goals and all of that kind of stuff, trying to keep people motivated. And yet there's still, even with that, there's still people that get the results and then lose them. Neuroscience, right? What does the brain want? And so it's been this constant evolution of keep saying, what don't I know enough of, or what aren't I skilled enough at? And being honest about it when I look at my clients and go, yeah, like I think we can always learn more, but I think I've kind of done about as much as I need to do with the exercise prescription side of thing. At the end of the day, it's still pick something up and put it down at a certain pace and under a certain kind of tension, under a certain load with a certain amount of rest, right? You go, I could, yeah, like if I study only this for the next 20 years, I'll get brilliant at exercise prescription, but I really don't believe it's exercise prescription that's lacking here, right? So it's nutrition, right? Okay, I've studied this, I've done this. Well, I could keep studying this for the next 20 years, but I really don't think it's just telling people what to eat and what not to eat that's going to solve the problem. And that's the approach, and so on and so forth. That's the approach that I took, and it's the approach that I would suggest any coach or trainer take, which is to speak honestly to themselves about what they're missing in their knowledge base or their skill set, and then start building a curricula around that kind of starts to close the gaps. And not only build the curricula from an informational perspective, but commit to using what you learn on a daily basis until you've sucked the marrow out of it. And you go, that's about as much as I think I need in this particular realm now. Let me ask another question. So I think a big part of being an absolutely fantastic coach is about curiosity. If you found yourself stop being curious and instead you've moved to being certain about everything, you only need this, you only need that, 3 of those, 2 of those, get this amount of sleep, drink that amount of water. If you found that PT, you're not curious about anything in PT or transformation, then there's something very unskillful happening within your world at the moment. And it's probably that's keeping you stuck. As soon as you can find something to be curious about and get really dogged on that and kind of lean into it and go, and you stay with it for as long as you're curious, and then you move to the next curious thing. And that's really what I've done, and that's really what most of the coaches that I've coached who've gone on to do really, really good things, you find, like, what's the big things that are kind of causing you to kind of doubt yourself or to question yourself or that you just really, really want to know at the moment, and that's, to be honest, the question is that's the question I'm constantly asking myself, and I'm still with the brain. Right? And I've been with the brain now for the last 10 years at least, because I still feel like I'm scratching the surface. And even though I taught the I think that was 7 years ago when I came to ProFit for the mind map. I think it was.
Was it?
Yeah, I saw I think it was.
I did it with you, Dax, in 2017. I did it
online though, right?
No, we did it in Hounslow.
Oh, right, okay. So maybe I'm wrong there. All right. So yeah, I mean, I've been asking myself these questions over and over again, and even the course has changed from when you guys did it, right? It's different again, and it takes into account other things that I was curious about. That at the time, the answers were good enough for what I wanted to know and for what I was trying to accomplish. And then over time, I'm like, exactly the same pattern evolves. You go, you're using your very, very best mind map material on this client, and it's still not working the way you're expecting it to. And that just creates some new curiosity and says, right, well, let's evolve this a little bit further again. And you start pursuing it again. So yeah, it's about curiosity more than anything else, I think. I'd always come back to that. If you've stopped being curious because you feel so certain, you're in the doldrums for sure, but you're likely to be starting to regress very soon. Your certainty in this instance doesn't lead to greater confidence. It might lead to greater confidence, but that confidence might be unfounded.
Yeah. And when you hear you talking about that, Dax, it's easy to see why you've had such great longevity in this industry, because you've evolved constantly into the next area of curiosity. I think a lot of PTs find themselves a bit stuck.
Yeah.
Like you say, they're in the doldrums and then they lose interest and go elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't think I could have. I mean, it's fair play to people that can. I don't think I could have been doing even though, like I say, this is a bit tongue in cheek, because it's, obviously even my PT coaching was very different to most, but I don't think I could have counted to 10 over and over again for 24 years, or variations thereof. You know what I mean? I don't think I could have done that. But because of how I've evolved my approach to coaching over that time, it always feels a bit new. Like I've got the benefit of being able to lean into those areas that I do feel really confident of, but I'm not so confident of them that I know that they're infallible and that they'll work for all people at all times under all circumstances. I'm like, no, I've got some more tools in my toolkit and I know how to use them. But what I'm always looking for is I'm actually inspired by the situations where my stuff doesn't work, because to me that's exciting.
Yeah.
Like, let's figure out what's going on here, and it really is exciting.
Yeah. I've got a question as well, Dax, that hopefully will tie up a few topics that we've covered throughout the chat so far. So earlier on, you were talking about using your business and building something designed around this lifestyle and spending time with family and things like that. So there was like a bit of a balance element there. There was then talking about working in your business versus on your business and trying to get that right and not going too far one way or the other. There's then this element here about constantly learning and growing and pursuing things. So my question around that is, what do you think a PT, especially in this newer end, what do you think a PT should be spending their time on, and how should they be spending their time throughout the week if they're going to spend time on the business, in the business, learning, growing? Because again, I think that gets quite overwhelming for a lot of people. They just don't know. They don't know what to do when they carve out a bit of time for themselves or whatever. How would you think about that with all the experience you've had?
I guess there's a couple of aspects to that. So the first one would be that really, more than anything else, is a coach is a master of communication. Get better at communicating. Get better at develop a simpler, clearer language for saying what you're trying to say, and it'll don't so much try to be understood by everyone. Try and fix it so that it's almost impossible to be misunderstood. And that's what I feel like I've done a really good job of that over the years. Kind of, I can always be better, but you may not always completely get or agree with what I'm saying. You might go, oh yeah, but you can do it this way and you can do it that way. But I'm, because I come at most things from that clarity of language of trying not to be misunderstood. I think that makes all of my interactions with people a lot more powerful. And there's part of that kind of leads to the sense of value of working with me. The reason I don't get a lot of price resistance is because I'm so clear in what I'm trying to say. Whereas a lot of trainers, they're trying to say one thing, they don't really know whether it's appropriate, they don't know how to say it, they haven't necessarily developed their own language for it. And that kind of ties into the next part, which is the first things to do, I think, for any trainer or coach is to start building their own philosophy. And a philosophy is made up of a bunch of principles, and a bunch of principles your principles are made up of a bunch of practices, and so on and so forth, right? So kind of this and this is what I do when I'm mentoring coaches and trainers, is like, okay, let's get your philosophy so clear that it can't be misunderstood. Once you've got your philosophy clear, let's get your principles so clear that they can't be misunderstood. right? And let's get the principles kind of so embedded with practices that bring those principles to life in an unambiguous kind of way, right? And so it's this idea of kind of starting from the ground up, because structure determines function, right? Wheels only roll because they're round. Planes only fly because of their aerodynamics, right? Structure determines function. You can't throw a brick-shaped plane in the air and make it fly. It won't work. Likewise, businesses, likewise lives, right? But ultimately, a business is a vehicle for a message. That's all it is. That message is our philosophy. A business is a vehicle for a message. What's your message, and what makes it different or more complete or more relevant to the person you're speaking to? And if you can get that really, really clear, it will make you a better on the ground in the trenches coach, because that's all you're ever doing is reiterating your message in lots and lots of different ways, right? So my philosophy that everything that I do, whether that be coaching, education, writing books, writing posts, coming on podcasts, my philosophy that underpins all of it is that you don't have to be more than you are right now to be happy, successful, and free. But if that's ever going to happen for you, you have to start being all that you are. So stop playing small and stop hiding parts of yourself and stop saying that you're not ready and all of that, and just start being all that you are, not more than you are. Be all that you are. And all that I am is I'm very intellectual in some ways. I'm really goofy in others. I'm profane. I'm profound, right? I like a good giggle. I'm definitely like off color with a lot of my jokes and sense of humor. But the more time people spend around me, they'll actually see all of the Dax Moy, right? When none of it I'm not embarrassed by any of it. I don't try and hide any of it. I'll just go out into the world and try and be all that I am. And as I'm being all that I am, I start to have more of the things that I want, right? And I think that's what a lot of coaches and trainers that tend to be missing. They think there's a right way and a wrong way to do stuff, and they're modeling themselves on other people instead of saying, what's my philosophy? What are my principles? What are the practices that I'm going to adhere to for the next 3 or 6 months? So they really embed, and I give them a really good field test and go, you know what, I tried that and that didn't really work. I don't like it anymore. And so I'm going to change out one, I'm going to stay with the same principle, but I'm going to change out one of the practices so that we do it in a slightly different way than we were doing it before. Everyone that I see kind of making a real success of their business, and by extension of that, making a real success of their lives, has a version of that. You'll speak to them. They may not be using the language I'm using, principles and philosophies and practices, but they'll tell you what their life is about. They'll tell you what's most important. They'll tell you what their values are. They'll tell you what their core driving beliefs are. And they can spout them off right now, like literally off the top of their head, because it's with them and it's what drives who they are. So yeah, I think I'd start there. So it's not, on the one hand, it doesn't sound very sexy. On the other hand, it's extremely profound and powerful, because if you do that, things suddenly start to change for you very quickly.
It removes the friction again, doesn't it? Once
right.
you're super clear on that, then it takes all the friction and the kind of fuss away from the
right.
week, and you get more done.
I know what events to attend, what ones not to attend. I know which books to read and what not to read, based upon who I said I am, what principles are important to me, and where I'm going to. Now, that doesn't mean that at times I bring in deliberately opposing philosophies so I can learn from them, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the world over the last couple of years, from everything from LGBTQ to Black Lives Matter to Trump, anti-Trump and I was reading books and kind of watching seminars and webinar things from people that were in complete opposition to where I stand on some of those subjects, right? Other people weren't incomplete, but they were not necessarily kind of how I would like to kind of think about those topics. But I read them and studied them anyway, because I wanted to understand my position and understand whether my position was as complete as I thought it was. And some of them caused me to change my mind on certain things. Others didn't. Others caused me to entrench even more deeply into the way I was thinking about things. But I don't know. But the kind of what this person is saying to me is so anathema to the way I believe about this subject that I'm even stronger. I have an even stronger feeling about it than I did before. Right. So, but when you know your philosophies, you know your principles, you know your values, you know your beliefs, all of this side of stuff. It makes life a lot easier to navigate. It's a bit like having a constant map and compass in front of you. It says, what direction am I going to go, and am I on course or off course? The reason I called that or I sent a message to that storeman is because I knew that I was off course and I wanted to get back on course. And so it was about me.
That's great. Well, thank you for saying yes to coming on the ProFit podcast as one of your things to attend, because we just did an hour and 40, and it's been super interesting. I think this is the least me and Matt have spoken on a podcast episode ever.
I don't know what that says about me.
For us.
But I mean that in a good way, is because it's been brilliant just to sit here and listen to it, and I know everybody listening will think the same and take a lot away from it. So thank you so much for giving up your afternoon and coming on with us.
No worries.
And where can people find you right now?
Well, with a name like Dax Moy, I'm kind of easy to find in social media. I mostly only use Facebook. I'm not a big Twitterite or kind of LinkedIn or any of that kind of stuff. I am on them, but like I post so infrequently, like you wouldn't know. My main website really for trainers, really, I guess that would be mindmapcoach.com, where you can learn about the neuroscience of coaching. A lot of the goodness we've been speaking about here, it's like a year-long diploma program that covers this and a ton more on the neuroscience of behavior and transformation. So that's probably the best site to visit.
Perfect. Dax, thanks very much for coming on again.
It's a pleasure, mate.
Good luck with everything in the future. I'm sure that we'll see you all over the place again, all over the world doing adventures, and until the next time we get you back on, hopefully.
No worries. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Dax. Hello and welcome back to the ProFit podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Robinson, and I am joined with, I'm going to do that again. After just saying I'm going to do this on the fly so confidently. Right, hang on.
Need to stretch. Fucking. That's it. Right.
Okay, let's go again. Hello and welcome back to the ProFit podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Robinson, and I am joined by Paul Campe. How are you doing, Paul?
Very good, mate. Hello, everybody out there.
And we are into our interview series now, aren't we, Paul? So we've got another special guest on today joining us. His name is Dax Moy. And for those of you that don't know Dax, which is a crying shame if you don't, because he's such a prominent figure. He's been an amazing influence on myself and Paul and people that we've worked with. Just to give you a bit of an insight, Dax has been in the industry 24 years. He's been a PT, he's ran PT studios, he's educated personal trainers. He's gone heavily down the coaching route that saw him go into neuroscience and the inner depths of the workings of the brain. So Dax has got very interesting takes on coaching, personal training, and has got a vast array of experience that many of us just haven't yet come across before. So he's a fantastic guest. Strap in, because this is a bit of a longer episode than usual, isn't it, Paul? It was a big conversation.
It's a big one. And we were just saying we could have gone further with this. We honestly could have recorded more, because there's we didn't kind of trim the fat on this episode. It's all good content. It's all quality. So really settle in for it. Give yourself a good hour and a half to listen to this, because you will get a lot out of it.
So without further ado, here's our interview with Dax Moy.